Hey guys, welcome to the next tutorial in the RPG Stats series. In this one, we're going back to our RPG stat modifiers that we created earlier. Let me just open these up real quick. And here's the script. As you can see previously, we're using a Enum to list out all of our RPG modifier types that would be usable in our game. And let me jump into our modifiable class. And in here, in our RPGStatModifiable class, in the update modifiers method, we listed out all these floats for each type that we wanted, sorted them, and updated our value by hard coding it down in the bottom. Now, this makes a big pain when we want to extend and add new stat modifiers because we'd have to add another value up here. In our for each loop, we'd have to add another switch case. And then down here in where we're calculating, we'd have to figure out how to add it into there. So in this video, we're going to go through our RPG stat modifier and rework it to make it have a little bit more ease of a time of extending it and adding new modifiers, so it'll just automatically handle new ones that are added. So let's begin by just jumping into this. Our RPG stat modifier class is going to take a big hit and almost completely change. A lot of these values are going to be different, and we're going to add a lot of new functionality to it. So let's go with the biggest changes. This type enum, we can get rid of it. We're not going to use it anymore. Our RPG stat types, we're going to get rid of that as well. And we can remove the corresponding properties from here and everything relating to them. And as well as, actually, let's just remove this last constructor, and we're just going to pretty much rewrite everything. So let's just go from the top down. We have our float value. This is staying alive. Next, we're going to add, actually, first off, before we add the next one, we're going to be adding the system namespace because we'll be using it. And we'll be adding a public event. Yeah, we're going to add another event to this month. And it will be the on value change. So the idea behind this is later on when we start going into buffs, they will be applied to our character, and they will add stat modifiers to our character's stats. So those buffs, to give them a little bit more flexibility later on, I'm going to say they may change the modifier's value at runtime while the buff is on. Say if you have a buff that increases its modifier value by a certain percent every couple seconds. So we'll want to know when the modifier changes, so we'll have this event here. So in order for that to work, let's jump down to our first property that we'll be implementing, our float. Actually, we already have it implemented. We're going to just go down here to our value property and extend it a bit. We're not going to do anything in the getter, but in the setter, we're going to rework this. So in here, we want to check if the value does not equal the value we're setting it to. We're going to set the value to the new value. And then we're going to check if on value change does not equal null. So we have someone listening to this modifier. We're going to call our event. And we're going to pass this modifier and null for now, since we're not going to use the arguments. Cool. So that sets up our event for now. Next one we're going to have is another property, which I'll add above the value. And this one will be int. Actually, first off, we're going to make it an abstract because we're going to make inheriting classes define this. It's going to be an int, and we're going to call this order. And it will have a get only. What this order does is it defines the order which inheriting stat modifiers will be applied to the stat. You'll see how we actually use this later on when we rework our stat modifiable class. But for now, this is the order which the stats are, or the modifiers will be applied. Next on, we're going to add another property. And this one's just going to be a public bool. This will be stacks. And we'll have a getter and a setter. Now this property, the stacks, you'll also see how it works later on. But think of it this way. If we have 3 modifiers that have a, let's say, a value of 3, so combining them all would be equal to 9, and they're all set to stacks equals true. So we'll total those values together. Then, if you have a modifier of the same type, which has stacks set to false, and its value is 10, that would be greater than the 3 sub-ones, so we just use the greatest value. So this pretty much is going to be used to check the sum versus the max value for the stacks. So yeah, you'll see how that works out later. It's a tad bit confusing, but it will add a nice deal of functionality later on. And then we'll jump into our constructors and just define these. We're just going to have 2 constructors. We'll just call this one is going to have value. And in here, we're going to set our, actually, I'm going to just do it this way. Value. And we're going to have stacks. Oops, not state. What? Stacks equals false. And yeah, add an F so it's float. But yeah, we're going to do those 2 in here. Next one, we're going to create another constructor, RPGStatModifier. This one's also going to take the value, but it's also going to have a bool and just stacks. And we'll just define the same things. Oops. And up here, I forgot to actually set this to value. There we go. And those constructors are the 2 methods for setting this up, since those are the only values that we can change currently. And then finally, the major method, which is going to be a public abstract int. And this is going to be apply modifier. And this will take an int stat value and then a float mod value. So what these 2 values are, let's go with the mod value first. When we're calculating the modifier value, we'll be taking in consideration the value property and stacks, and we'll determine the highest combined value of the like modifiers. And that value we determine will be passed into our apply modifiers method to the modifier value parameter. Now the stat value will be the stats base value plus all the modifiers before the modifier that's currently being applied. So if this modifier was the 3rd in the order of modifiers being applied, the 1st and 2nd modifier types will be applied into the stat value or parameter. So there's that. You'll also see how this works later on once we actually implement the code to handle these. Oh, cool. That's all we're going to do in our stat modifier class. There's a lot of new stuff to cover in there. So we'll jump back into Unity. Oops, I have a couple errors. Let's see. Oh, yeah. We also have to change our class into an abstract class since we have abstract properties and methods. And that should get rid of those errors besides this one. And oh yeah, this is in our StatModifiable, which we'll come to later. So you'll have a couple errors while we're working on this. Now in our modifiers folder, I'm going to create a new folder just for the hell of it. Call this RPGStatModifiers. This folder will just contain all the classes that inherit from the StatModifiers class. And I'm just going to go down and recreate our modifiers that we had previously. So I'll start with RPG mod base %. I'm just going to create all of them here, and then we'll go and implement them. And copy paste, base add. Total % and total add. Go. I can open these up. I'm going to open them all up at once. And there we go. We have all of them open. So I'm going to toss our RPGStat modifier to the side so we can see everything we need. And we'll just start with which one should I start? How about the base percent, since it's the first one that's going to be applied. So we'll inherit from our RPGStat modifier. And we can delete all this, since we're not going to be using those. And we can implement the abstract class. So these are our two majors. Also, I'm just going to copy paste our constructors over into our percent and delete some of these and pass the base class the value or the current value. We'll also have an error pop up since those aren't actually modifier, they're the actual class. Base, value, and stacks. So we'll just pass all the values to the base classes. So that's all you need to do for the constructors for these. Now for the fun stuff up here. In order, this is going to be our first modifier that we want to be applied to our stats. So we're just going to be return 1. And inside our apply modifier, the percent, we're going to be returning an int. Since our mod value up here is a float, we're going to have to typecast. But this value is going to be our stat value times our mod value, since we're taking a percentage of our stat value. Simple as that. And that's all we have to do for this percent one. I'm going to copy all this and toss it into our total percent. Since it will use exactly the same setup, I'm going to have to rename the constructors. But yeah, we'll use exactly the same setup. Only difference is our order value will be 3, since it's going to be the third one applied to our stats. I'm going to copy and paste this again. Oops. Excuse me. I'm going to copy paste this again and toss this into our add. Now our base add is going to be the second one applied. And we're going to toss this over here into our constructor. And in our apply modifier, we're going to change this ever so slightly. We're just going to return the modifier value because we're adding it on. That's all we want. Copy paste the add again and toss it into our total add. This will be applied fourth. In our row, we'll have the same apply modifier and we'll update the constructors again. There you have it. We have the 4 previous modifiers we've had in this project updated to use the new method. Let's jump back to Unity. And instead of going into our RPGStatModifiable, we're going to actually open up our iStatModifiable interface because we're adding one additional method to it. So in here, we're going to add the avoid remove modifier. RPGStatModifier mod. So this will allow us just to remove individual modifiers without having to clear them all out and then add each one back that we want to keep later on. This will just make it a little bit easier and help with later handlings of how we're going to do things. You'll see it in the next video I'd make. Now we can finally open up our StatModifiable class. Unity wants me to. Okay, in here, we have 2 main things that we want to do. First, we want to update our update modifiers, and after that, we're going to be listening to the event we have in our modifiers so we can update this. But first, let's go into the major change here. Now we have this whole switch statements and all this here, but we want to change this to work a little bit better. So one of the namespaces we're going to be using now, we're going to have some functionality. We're going to use system.link. This has a couple nice methods that makes a lot of this easier to handle with a lot less code. Recommend looking up some of this, and depending on what your developing to, you may or may not be able to use all these methods and may have to find a different way to go about this. But for the time being, let's step through this. All this in here, we can delete. Keep the stat modifier value at the top and the trigger value change at the bottom. But let's start off. We're going to do var ordered groups. And this will be well, we're going to be using link if you haven't seen it, but this will just be a collection of all our modifiers in groups of modifiers in the correct order. It's kind of as simple as that. We're going to take our stat modifiers and we're going to be using the link method order by. We're going to pass in m for modifier. And then if you haven't seen lambda expressions, I'd suggest looking that up. M.order. So we're going to order by the modifier's order property. And then we're going to take the return from that method and do a group by. Then we're going to do modifiers. We're going to group by the modifier's order value again. So in the end, what we have is similar to a list of groups containing a list of modifiers of the same order. So after we have all that done, all our modifiers will be in the correct order. And we'll do a for each loop of var group in ordered groups. So this will be every modifier based on their order value. So in here, we're going to have our two values for our sum and our max. Sum will be the total of all modifiers in this group that have stacks to true, and max will be the max value of all, or the max value of the modifiers in this group with stacks set to false. So that'll just be the highest value. So finally, we'll do another for each inside here and go mod in group. So we're going to be looping through every mod in this group. So if the mod stacks equals false, we're just going to do a if mod.value is greater than the max value. We're going to go max equals mod.value. And then else on the if it stacks, if we're going to do sum plus equals mod.value. Cool, so that'll just combine all our values together based on if it stacks or does not stack. Now, next, we want to do stat modify value plus equals group dot first, which will get the first element in the group that we're currently in. And then we're going to call that element's apply modifier. So for the stat value, we're passing in the stat. Well, actually, let's go stat base value plus the stat mod value. This will give the current value of the stat. And then the mod value that we're going to be using, we're going to first off, we're going to check if the sum is greater than the max. And then if the sum is greater than the max, we're going to supply the sum. Else, we're going to supply the max value. So there's that. This will just loop through all our modifiers and apply the min and max. That's actually all we have to do for update modifiers. And now this will take into account any additional modifiers that we add on to our project. So it cleans up pretty nicely. Now let's jump back into our, well, in the same script, but we're just going to add some more code. So if you jump back into Unity now, it's going to scream an error saying that we don't actually implement all of the functions from our StatModifiable class. So if we were to come in here and to implement again, we'd get this remove modifier from the bottom. And I'm just going to move this, put it up under our add modifier. So now we have all this. We're going to go stat mods.remove mod within our remove modifier, just so it's consistent. Now we want to step through these three methods, the add modifier, remove modifier, and clear modifiers, and listen or stop listening to the modifiers on value change event. So to do that, we'll just go mod.onValueChange plus equals, and we do not have a method to call for this. So at the bottom of our script, I'm going to go public void on mod value change. We'll do an object, which is the modifier. And let's just go system.eventargs. And this will be the arguments, which will be null since we're not passing anything for now. But in this onValueChange method, all we want to do is update modifiers. Whenever a modifier's value change, we're just going to update the modifier value. Simple as that. So back in our add modifier value method, or add modifier method, we're just going to use on modifier value change. And we can copy this line into the remove and change it from plus equals to minus equals. Then in our clear, before we call clear, we go for each our mod in our stat mods. We're going to take this line from our remove modifiers and put it in this for each loop. So we're going to stop listening to all our modifiers in our modifiers list and then clear the list. And that's it. That's everything we need to do to make this listen to our new modifiers and update our new modifiers types. So let's jump back into Unity, check if we have any errors. And we do not. Cool. Now, I believe we should. I thought we would have actually an error. Let's jump into our RPG stat types. Oh yeah, it's all commented out. So in here, let's uncomment our modifier types. Now this is the old way we handled it. We had really long. We had the stat type we wanted to change and the base value %. Now the stat type was useless since we were already applying to the stat we wanted. And this value change now is we changed since we have our new class. So let me just pop this down and I'm just going to write the new one under the old one. So it's going to be health, add modifier, new, RPGStatMod, and this is going to be base value %. And all we need to do is pass the value. That's literally it. So we have this one line here compared to this other long one. Now, our new functionality is we can also add a bool in here and just say, does it stack? And say, we could say false. And say, it doesn't stack with any like types. So we can just do this for each one. Health.add modifier, RPGStatMod, and base value add 50F. And do it again. Total %. And 1.0F. And that's all we have to do. That's our new layout for our modifiers. And we have all our new functionality in the background. So if you ran this now, everything should appear to work. Well, I would hope so anyway. We'll double check this. And down here in our console, let's see. So we have 200 health. Our mana jumps up and our health jumps up. And I believe those were the correct values. We're going to be going into we might be going into a video later on that we'll be creating test scripts just to validate that everything's working correctly. But for now, we'll just going to be, it looks relatively correct. But yeah, that's all we had to do for updating our stat modifiers. We have all this new functionality to play with later on when we go into our later sections for items and buffs. But yeah, for now, that's all it is for there. In the next video, I'm planning on going back to our stat collection and extending it with a lot more functionality that we'll use in our later videos. As right now, our stat collection is really small and has like really nothing we can do with it other than just set up stats. Later on, we'll have a ton of add, removes, clears, updates, everything you can do to an individual stat, but in the stat collection. So we can modify all of those from outside. Because we're planning on editing this stat collection elsewhere. Also, this stat collection is we're gonna make it so we can attach it to a game object, just for the easy drag and drop. But yeah, that's all we're gonna do in this video. Thanks for watching, and hope this was helpful. I'll see you next time.